Have you ever noticed how worry sneaks into your life when you least expect it? You can be sitting in a peaceful room, nothing dangerous around you, yet your heart races as if a storm is coming. You can have food on your table and safety in your home, yet your mind whispers questions that steal your joy. What if I lose everything? What if tomorrow brings disaster? What if I am not strong enough to face what is coming? This is the strange and painful truth about worry. It does not need real problems to exist. It feeds on imagined ones. It creates storms in your mind, even when the sky above you is clear. Buddhism teaches us that worry is like a thief that robs you silently. It steals your sleep, it steals your peace, and worst of all, it steals your happiness. But here is the good news: worry is not your master. You can learn to see through it, you can learn to silence it, and you can live with joy no matter what life places in your path. In this journey, I will share with you Buddhist wisdom that will help you break free from the prison of worry and protect the happiness that is already waiting for you inside. 1. Worry lives in the future. Happiness lives in the present. If you slow down and begin to watch the movement of your own mind, you will quickly discover a profound truth. Worry does not exist in the present moment. It never lives here. Instead, worry feeds itself on the shadows of the past and the uncertainty of the future. It pulls your mind into places that you cannot touch and times you cannot control. Think about it carefully. When you are truly present, simply breathing and aware, is there ever anything to worry about in that exact instant? Most of the time, the answer is no. Yet our minds are rarely satisfied with the present. They run forward, imagining countless disasters and failures that may never come, or they turn backward, replaying old mistakes, regrets, and painful memories that can no longer be changed. This is why worry feels so heavy and endless. It is an echo of a time you cannot hold, either because it has not arrived or because it has already slipped away. The present moment, however, is where life actually unfolds. It is here, not yesterday, and not tomorrow, that you breathe, smile, walk, speak, and live. When you eat a meal, you cannot eat it yesterday, and you cannot eat it tomorrow. You can only taste it right now. When you share a laugh with someone you love, the joy cannot be carried into the past, and it cannot be stored for the future. It only blossoms in this instant. Yet because the mind is restless and rarely still, people miss this truth. They sit at the dinner table, but their thoughts are on tomorrow's bills. They watch the sunset, but their hearts are still replaying the harsh words spoken earlier in the day. They are alive, but they are not truly present. And because they are not present, they are not fully alive. The Buddha taught that true living begins with returning to the present, again and again, like a bird returning to its nest. Every time you breathe and become aware of the air entering and leaving your lungs, you come home to the moment. Every time you feel the ground beneath your feet as you walk slowly and mindfully, you return to life as it is happening right now. This is the power of presence. It gently but firmly pulls you away from the illusions of worry and anchors you in reality. The future will always arrive on its own schedule, no matter how much you think about it, and the past is already sealed, its lessons already given. When you understand this, you see that worry has no real foundation. It is a ghost that lives only in your imagination. By training yourself to bring attention back to this very breath, to the sensations in your body, to the awareness of the world around you, you begin to cut worry off at its root. Imagine standing in a storm, your mind racing with fears, and then suddenly stepping into a quiet room where all is still. That quiet room is the present moment. Here, worry cannot survive because it has no soil to grow in. And when you learn to stay in this present moment, happiness is no longer something you chase or search for. It rises naturally, like sunlight breaking through clouds. It becomes effortless because it was always here, waiting for you beneath the noise of worry. Happiness does not need to be created. It needs only to be noticed, and the place where you notice it is now. 2. The illusion of control feeds worry. At the heart of most worry lies a powerful illusion, the belief that if we think enough, prepare enough, and imagine enough, we can somehow control everything that happens in our lives. We convince ourselves that worry is a form of protection, that by running through endless what-if scenarios in our heads, we can prevent disaster, avoid pain, and guarantee safety. But if you pause and examine this belief closely, you will see how untrue it really is. Worry does not give you control, it only gives you stress. It does not shape tomorrow, it only steals today. The truth is, much of life is beyond your control. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control how others will act. You cannot control the unfolding of every detail in your future. What you can control is your own response, your own choices, and your own state of mind. And yet, instead of focusing on these, most people spend their lives trying to manage what is outside their reach, and this is where endless worry is born. Buddhism teaches that attachment to control is one of the deepest roots of human suffering. When we cling to the idea that life must unfold exactly as we want, we set ourselves up for disappointment and fear. Imagine trying to hold water tightly in your fist. The harder you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. Life is the same. The more you try to grasp every outcome, the more it escapes you, and the more exhausted you become. Worry feeds on this grasping, whispering in your ear that if you don't think about every possibility, you will not be ready, that if you let go, something terrible will happen. But this is not wisdom, it is fear disguised as responsibility. True wisdom is knowing what belongs to you and what does not. The Buddha often spoke of impermanence, the truth that everything in life is changing, moving, and flowing. When you forget this truth, you try to force things to stay as they are, or you try to make them turn out exactly as you imagine. But impermanence cannot be controlled, only understood. The storms of life will come, whether or not you spend nights worrying about them. Illness, loss, change, uncertainty. These are part of the fabric of existence. If you believe worry can protect you from them, you are giving energy to an illusion. What worry really does is drain your strength, weaken your spirit, and cloud your clarity, so that when challenges truly come, you meet them already exhausted. Think about your own life. How many times did you lie awake worrying about something that never actually happened? How many days did you spend with your stomach tied in knots, only to realize later that all that fear was wasted energy? And even in the moments when things did go wrong, did your worry ever actually prevent the outcome, or did it simply make you suffer twice, once in imagination and then again in reality? This is the trap of control. By worrying, you punish yourself in advance for things that may never come. The Buddhist path teaches a different way. Instead of clinging to control, we practice acceptance and mindful action. This does not mean passivity. It does not mean you sit back and do nothing. It means you act wisely on what is within your power, and you let go of what is not. If rain is coming, you cannot stop the clouds from gathering, but you can carry an umbrella. If people speak unkind words about you, you cannot stop their mouths, but you can stop their words from taking root in your heart. If the future is uncertain, you cannot predict every outcome, but you can take one mindful step at a time in the direction you choose. This is where real peace lives, not in trying to control the uncontrollable, but in calmly guiding what you can. When you begin to live this way, something beautiful happens. The grip of worry loosens because you see clearly that worry never gave you control in the first place. You stop wasting your energy on what is beyond your reach, and you invest it instead in living with presence, awareness, and courage. Life becomes lighter, not because it is free of challenges, but because you no longer carry the heavy illusion that you must control everything. You trust the flow of life, and in that trust, happiness begins to grow. 3. Worry is a story, not reality. One of the most powerful truths you can realize about the nature of worry is that it is not reality, it is only a story that your mind tells you. The mind is an extraordinary storyteller, capable of creating vivid images, detailed scenarios, and endless what-ifs. When you begin to worry, your imagination takes control and begins writing a script filled with problems, disasters, and losses. You see yourself failing the exam, losing the job, falling sick, being abandoned, or facing endless misfortune. The story plays so clearly in your head that it feels real, and your body reacts as though it is happening right now. Your heart beats faster, your chest tightens, your thoughts spin, and you feel overwhelmed. But if you pause and examine the moment carefully, you will see that none of what you are fearing is actually happening. The suffering is real, but the cause is not. This is the strange trick of worry. It creates an entire world out of imagination, and then it traps you inside that world. You end up living in a prison of your own thoughts, reacting to events that do not exist outside your mind. It is like watching a frightening movie and forgetting that it is only a film. You scream, your heart races, your palms sweat, yet you are sitting safely in a chair. The fear feels real, but the danger is not. In the same way, worry makes you live in future catastrophes that have not arrived and may never arrive. You suffer before the suffering even comes, and in many cases, you suffer for nothing at all. Buddhism teaches us that this confusion between imagination and reality is one of the main causes of human suffering. When the Buddha spoke of illusion, he was not speaking only of grand philosophical ideas. He was pointing to the everyday illusions of the mind, and worry is one of them. The mind fabricates stories, and because you are attached to them, you mistake them for truth. But if you practice awareness, you can begin to separate the story from reality. Each time you catch yourself worrying, ask, is this happening right now in this moment, or is it only a thought? That single question creates space between you and your worry. It allows you to see that while the thought exists, the problem does not. And once you recognize the story as a story, it begins to lose its power over you. Think of how many times you have worried about something that never happened. Perhaps you imagined that a conversation would go badly, only to find that it was pleasant. You imagined you would fail, but you succeeded. You imagined you would be rejected, but you were welcomed. All those hours of suffering were built on stories that never came true. Even in the moments when something did go wrong, the reality was often not as bad as the story you created in your head. The mind, when driven by fear, exaggerates and multiplies problems. It does not simply tell a story, it writes a nightmare. But just as you can wake up from a nightmare and realize it was only a dream, you can also wake up from worry and see it for what it truly is: imagination, not reality. The practice then becomes learning to return again and again to what is real. Reality is simple. It is the sensation of your breath entering and leaving your body. It is the ground beneath your feet. It is the sound of birds outside your window. It is the smile of a friend beside you. These things are not stories. They are direct experiences. When you root yourself in these, the stories of worry begin to fade. The mind may continue to create them. It is what the mind does, but you no longer get lost in them. You become like a person watching clouds pass in the sky. You see the shapes form and dissolve, but you do not mistake them for solid mountains. Buddhist wisdom invites us to remember that the present moment is always lighter than the stories of the mind. Right now, in this very second, you are breathing, you are alive, you have survived every difficulty that has come before, and you are still here. This is the truth of reality. Everything else, the fears, the projections, the endless what-ifs are only shadows. When you live in shadows, life feels heavy and frightening. But when you step back into reality, you realize that this moment is bearable, even peaceful. And this realization gives you strength. The more you practice, the more you will see worry for what it truly is, a storyteller that tries to trick you into believing its tales. And like all stories, you have the choice to keep reading or to put the book down. By choosing to step out of the story and into reality, you reclaim your power. You no longer allow fear to write your future or dictate your present. Instead, you live in what is real, and in what is real, you will always find peace. 4. Happiness is found in letting go. When you look closely at the nature of worry, you will see that it is nothing more than holding on to thoughts, fears, expectations, and imagined outcomes. Worry clings tightly, as though gripping a rope that is burning your hands, yet still refusing to let go. You hold on to the thought of what might happen, you replay the memory of what already happened, and you carry both with you into every moment of your day. This is why life begins to feel unbearably heavy. Each worry is like a stone you place inside a bag, and over time the bag becomes so full that you struggle to carry it. You may think the burden comes from life itself, but often it comes from the weight of your own unwillingness to release. Buddhism teaches us that happiness is not something you chase, achieve, or store up for later. True happiness is what naturally rises when the unnecessary weight is dropped. Just as the sun does not need to be created, but only revealed when the clouds part, happiness does not need to be built, it only needs to be uncovered. And it is uncovered through the art of letting go. When you let go of worry, you do not lose anything real. You only lose the imagined fears and heavy illusions that keep you from seeing life clearly. Letting go does not mean carelessness, and it does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means loosening the tight fist of control and fear that keeps you in constant tension, and instead learning to trust the natural flow of life. Think of a river. If you throw leaves into it, the current will carry them downstream. You do not need to chase after them, and you do not need to hold them back. But most people, when faced with the stream of thoughts and worries, do exactly the opposite. They chase, they cling, they fight, they resist. The result is exhaustion and struggle. But if you learn to stand on the shore and let the leaves float by, you remain calm, at peace, and still connected to the river. Your worries are those leaves. They appear, they drift, and they disappear, unless you keep reaching into the water to drag them back. Letting go is simply the choice to stop grasping at every leaf, to stop clinging to every thought, and to allow life to flow as it will. In our daily lives, letting go means recognizing the difference between what is essential and what is not. You may not be able to let go of paying bills, working hard, or caring for your loved ones. These are real responsibilities. But you can let go of the fear that you will not manage, the endless thought that you are not enough, the suspicion that failure is waiting around every corner. These are not responsibilities. They are mental burdens. Imagine walking with a heavy sack of stones on your back, and someone tells you that most of those stones are unnecessary, that you are free to set them down. Would you continue carrying them, or would you gladly release them and walk lighter? This is what the practice of letting go offers. The Buddha once taught that attachment is the root of suffering, and worry is nothing but attachment in disguise. Attachment to how the future should unfold, attachment to the idea that life must obey your plans, attachment to fears you replay as though clinging to a past that no longer exists. When you loosen these attachments, you do not become weaker, you become stronger, because you are no longer trapped in battles you cannot win. You save your energy for the battles that matter. You stop fighting the wind, and you begin to adjust your sails. Letting go also means learning to trust. Trust that life will not always bend to your will, but it will always move forward. Trust that you are capable of handling difficulties when they arrive, rather than living through them 1,000 times in your imagination before they even appear. Trust that even in loss, even in change, there can be growth and meaning. When you let go of the need to control, you begin to live with a quiet confidence. Instead of gripping every moment with fear, you hold life gently, with open hands. The more you practice this, the more you will notice how light and free you begin to feel. Worry loses its grip on you because it can only survive in a mind that clings. When the mind learns to release, worry has nowhere to stay. And in that open space where worry once lived, happiness emerges naturally, not the fleeting happiness that depends on conditions, but the deep happiness of a mind that is unburdened. It is the happiness of sitting quietly and feeling at peace with yourself. It is the happiness of walking under the sky without needing anything more than the fresh air. It is the happiness of knowing that you do not have to hold the entire weight of life on your shoulders. Happiness does not come when life finally becomes perfect. It comes when you finally learn to let go of the illusion that you must control every part of it. When you put down the bag of stones, when you unclench your fists, when you stop dragging the river's leaves back into your hands, you discover what was there all along: space, peace, joy, and the freedom to live fully in this moment. That is the gift of letting go, and it is the doorway to true happiness. Gratitude destroys worry. If worry is a shadow, then gratitude is the light that makes it disappear. These two states of mind cannot exist in the same place at the same time. When you are filled with gratitude, there is no space for worry to grow, and when you are consumed with worry, there is no space for gratitude to bloom. They cancel each other out. This is why Buddhist wisdom reminds us that the practice of gratitude is not simply about saying thank you or feeling good. It is a direct antidote to worry, a way to transform the restless energy of fear into the calm energy of appreciation. Think for a moment about what worry does. It drags your attention toward what you lack, what might go wrong, or what you fear losing. It narrows your vision until all you see is absence, danger, or uncertainty. Gratitude, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. It expands your vision to notice what is already here, what is already working, what is already supporting you. Gratitude shifts your focus from scarcity to abundance, from fear to trust, from restlessness to contentment. It is a powerful lens through which you begin to see reality differently. And once your perception changes, your experience of life changes as well. The truth is, most of us have far more blessings than we notice. We wake up each morning with air in our lungs, yet we rarely pause to appreciate the miracle of breathing. We have food on our tables, yet we often focus more on what we crave than on the nourishment we already have. We walk on 2 feet, see with our eyes, hear with our ears, and speak with our voices, yet these simple abilities are taken for granted until they are threatened or lost. Gratitude pulls us back to the awareness that nothing is guaranteed, that even the smallest detail of life is a gift. When you remember this truth, you realize how rich you already are, and the mind that feels rich has no need to worry because it no longer lives in the poverty of not enough. Buddhism teaches that the roots of worry often lie in craving and attachment. You want life to be a certain way, and you worry that it will not. You crave success, and you worry about failure. You crave health, and you worry about sickness. You crave acceptance, and you worry about rejection. Gratitude cuts through craving by teaching you to value what is already present. Instead of obsessing over what could go wrong, you start to see what has already gone right. Instead of being blind to what you have, you open your eyes to the countless gifts that surround you. Gratitude does not deny the reality of challenges, but it prevents you from being crushed by them because it gives you a stronger foundation of joy. One of the simplest but most powerful practices in Buddhism is mindful gratitude, pausing in your day to notice small things with awareness. When you drink a cup of tea, do not rush through it while worrying about tomorrow's tasks. Instead, taste the warmth, feel the comfort, and recognize the gift of having something so simple yet nourishing. When you see the sky at sunset, do not miss it while your mind is lost in fear. Instead, notice the colors, the light, and the reminder that beauty is always available in the present. When you hear the laughter of a loved one, do not let it slip by unnoticed. Allow yourself to feel deeply thankful for that moment, because nothing guarantees it will repeat. This practice transforms ordinary life into a field of treasures, and once your heart is full of treasures, worry loses its grip. Gratitude also teaches humility. When you realize how much of your life is supported by forces beyond your control, the sun that rises, the rain that falls, the farmers who grow your food, the teachers who gave you knowledge, the strangers who made the clothes you wear, you begin to see that you are never truly alone. Life is not something you carry alone on your shoulders. It is a web of interconnected support. Worry often makes you feel isolated, as though the entire burden of the future rests only on you. Gratitude, however, reminds you that you are held by countless invisible hands, and in this realization, worry softens into trust. Consider this: many people spend their lives worrying about what they do not have, only to reach the end and realize they never truly enjoyed what they did have. Gratitude prevents this tragedy. It grounds you in the present, allowing you to taste the sweetness of life before it passes. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Gratitude begins as a choice, something you must consciously cultivate, but with time it grows into a habit, and finally into a way of being. When gratitude becomes your default, worry has no room to settle. A simple daily practice can transform your entire relationship with worry. Each morning before you begin your day, pause and list 3 things you are grateful for. They do not need to be extraordinary. In fact, the simpler, the better. Be grateful for the breath in your body, for the roof over your head, for the ability to rise and meet another day. And each evening before you sleep, think of 3 more. Over time, this trains your mind to focus on what is present. Instead of drowning in what is absent, you will begin to notice more beauty, more blessings, and more reasons to feel safe and at peace. Gratitude destroys worry not by erasing all uncertainty, but by reminding you that even within uncertainty, there is already enough to be thankful for. It shows you that you do not need to wait for life to be perfect in order to feel happy. You can be happy now because you already hold countless gifts in your hands, and once you see that clearly, worry appears small and powerless in comparison. Gratitude, then, is not just a practice, it is a way of living. It is the key that opens the door to a peaceful mind, and once that door is open, worry cannot enter. 6. Worry cannot survive awareness. If there is one truth that Buddhist practice returns to again and again, it is this: awareness is the light that dissolves suffering. No matter what form suffering takes, anger, fear, sadness, or worry, when you bring the light of awareness to it, it begins to lose its power. Worry thrives in the dark, in the hidden corners of your mind, where thoughts run wild without observation. But the moment you turn your awareness toward it, worry is exposed for what it is: a passing thought, a temporary visitor, a cloud in the endless sky of your consciousness. It may still appear, but it no longer controls you, because you can see it clearly. To understand this, you must first realize how worry operates. Worry feeds on distraction and unconsciousness. Most people are not aware of how their minds are moving from moment to moment. They allow thoughts to arise and run unchecked, like a herd of wild animals stampeding across a field. One thought of fear appears, then it triggers another, and before long, a storm of worry takes over. The person begins to identify with these thoughts. This is my fear. This is my problem. This is my truth. In that moment, worry is not just a thought, it becomes who they are. But this only happens when there is no awareness. Without awareness, thoughts and emotions sweep you away like a river sweeping away a person who has fallen into its current. Awareness, however, is like standing on the riverbank instead of being tossed in the water. When you are aware, you see the river of thoughts flowing past, but you do not drown in it. You recognize, this is a thought. This is a worry. It has appeared, but it is not me. With this recognition, a profound shift happens. You no longer become the thought. You become the observer of the thought. And the observer is always free, no matter how turbulent the thought may be. The Buddha described this awareness as mindfulness, an open, non-judging attention to whatever arises in the present moment. To practice mindfulness is to become intimate with your own mind, to watch it with patience and curiosity instead of fear or resistance. Imagine sitting in a quiet room and watching a candle flame flicker. You do not try to force the flame to be steady, and you do not become upset when it moves. You simply observe it as it is. In the same way, mindfulness teaches you to sit quietly and watch your thoughts come and go, without trying to force them, without trying to suppress them. When worry arises, you notice it gently. Ah, here is worry. I see you. You are here now. And in that simple act of acknowledgement, worry loses its hidden strength. Why does this happen? Because worry cannot survive when it is seen clearly. Think of a shadow in a dark room. When you do not see it clearly, it looks frightening. It might seem like a monster lurking in the corner. But when you shine a light on it, you realize it was only a coat hanging on a chair. Awareness is that light. It reveals worry for what it truly is, not a real danger, not a prophecy of doom, but a thought created by the mind. And once you see this clearly, you no longer need to fear it. This is not to say that worry will never arise again. The mind is restless by nature, and thoughts will continue to appear. But awareness changes your relationship with worry. Instead of being controlled by it, you begin to watch it with calmness, like a parent watching a restless child. You do not scold the child, and you do not let the child run the house. You simply observe with patience until the child grows tired and settles down. In the same way, you observe your worry without judgment, and in time, it passes. The practice of awareness can be cultivated in many ways. One of the simplest is mindful breathing. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and bring your attention to the rise and fall of your breath. As you do this, thoughts of worry will inevitably appear. Instead of pushing them away or becoming lost in them, simply notice them. Here is a thought about the future. Here is a memory of the past. Here is a fear of what might happen, and then gently return to the breath. Each time you do this, you strengthen your ability to remain the observer, not the prisoner, of your thoughts. With time, this practice builds a kind of mental muscle, a steady awareness that accompanies you even outside of meditation. When you live with awareness, worry has fewer places to hide. You notice it in the small moments when you are about to eat, and your mind jumps to bills you have not paid, when you are talking to a loved one, and your mind imagines arguments that have not happened, when you are trying to sleep, and your mind writes endless stories about tomorrow. In each of these moments, awareness gives you the power to pause and see clearly. This is just worry. It is not reality. It is not happening right now. With this recognition, you gently release it and return to the present. Another important truth is that awareness teaches you impermanence. Every thought, every feeling, every worry arises, stays for a while, and then disappears. But when you are caught in worry unconsciously, it feels permanent. You believe it will never end, that it will haunt you forever. Awareness shows you the opposite, that even worry has no lasting life. It comes, it goes, it dissolves. The more you watch this pattern, the more confidence you gain in your ability to remain calm through the storms of the mind. Buddhist teachers often say, don't fight with your thoughts, just watch them. Worry grows stronger when you resist it, when you try to push it away or pretend it isn't there. But when you observe it calmly, without feeding it, it naturally fades. It is like a fire. If you stop adding wood, it burns itself out. Awareness is the act of no longer adding fuel to worry. Over time, this practice creates a profound transformation. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts at all. You are the awareness behind them, the clear space in which they appear and disappear. Worry may still arise, but it is no longer your master. It becomes like a passing cloud, while you remain the vast sky. The sky does not fight the cloud, nor does it cling to it. It simply allows it to pass, and in that vastness, peace and happiness naturally shine through. So remember, this: worry cannot survive in the presence of awareness. The next time your mind begins to spiral, do not run, do not resist. Simply pause, breathe, and look directly at your worry. See it clearly, and you will realize that it is only a thought, not a truth. And in that realization, you will find freedom. Awareness is not just a practice, it is the ultimate refuge, the place where the mind finds rest and the heart discovers the happiness that no worry can ever steal. 7. True happiness is inner, not outer. If there is one misunderstanding that fuels almost all human worry, it is the belief that happiness depends on external conditions. From childhood, we are taught to link our sense of peace to things outside ourselves: good grades, approval from others, financial success, physical beauty, relationships, and achievements. We grow up thinking, if I get this job, then I will be happy. If this person loves me, then I will be at peace. If I have enough money, then I can stop worrying. And yet, even when we achieve these things, worry still lingers. You may finally get the job, but then you worry about keeping it. You may earn money, but then you worry about losing it. You may find love, but then you worry about it fading. This cycle never ends, because external conditions are always changing, and if your happiness is tied to them, your happiness will always be unstable. Buddhism teaches that this search for happiness outside yourself is like chasing a mirage in the desert. From far away, it looks real. You believe that once you reach it, your thirst will finally be quenched. You run and run, exhausting yourself. But when you arrive, there is nothing there. The water was an illusion all along. In the same way, we run after possessions, recognition, security, and comfort, believing they will give us lasting peace. But when we arrive, we discover the happiness they give is temporary, fragile, and easily stolen by the winds of change. This is why the Buddha emphasized again and again that true happiness must be cultivated inwardly. He said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." It is not that external things have no value. They do, and they can bring moments of joy. But the danger is when you depend on them for your foundation of peace. If your foundation rests on things that are impermanent, then your happiness will also be impermanent. True happiness must come from something deeper, something that does not change with every shift of circumstance. That something is the stillness of your own mind and heart when you learn to be at peace with yourself. When you begin to turn inward, you realize that happiness is not an object to be acquired, but a state of being to be uncovered. It is not something you build piece by piece like a house. It is something already present, hidden beneath layers of fear, worry, craving, and attachment. The more you let go of these layers, the more the natural joy of your being shines through. Imagine a lake covered in ripples. When the wind is strong, the surface looks restless, disturbed, and unclear. But when the wind settles, the lake becomes still, and its surface reflects the sky perfectly. Happiness is like that reflection. It is already there, but it is hidden when the winds of worry and craving disturb the mind. Calm the winds, and happiness appears on its own. One of the reasons people struggle to find this inner happiness is because they confuse excitement with peace. When something new comes into your life, a promotion, a gift, a compliment, you feel excitement and you mistake it for true happiness. But excitement rises quickly and fades quickly. It depends entirely on circumstances. Peace, however, is steady, quiet, and unconditional. It is not loud or dramatic, but it lasts, and it is available to you in every moment, no matter what is happening outside. To discover this, you must begin to cultivate practices that return you to yourself. Mindfulness, meditation, and reflection are not just spiritual rituals, they are ways of reconnecting to the inner source of happiness. When you sit in silence and breathe, you are reminded that peace does not depend on tomorrow's success or yesterday's approval. It is here, in the present, in the simple awareness of being alive. When you practice gratitude, you see that even without everything you desire, you already have enough to feel content. When you practice letting go, you see that you do not need to control the future in order to feel safe now. These practices slowly but surely reveal that your inner state is far more powerful than any outer condition. Think of all the people you may have seen in life who seem to have everything and yet remain deeply unhappy. Celebrities with fame and wealth who struggle with emptiness, powerful leaders who live with fear, or individuals with beautiful families who still feel restless. Their outer conditions look perfect, but because they lack inner peace, they cannot enjoy what they have. On the other hand, think of the monks, sages, or even ordinary people who live simply, with very little, yet radiate a joy and calmness that cannot be shaken. Their secret is not what they have, but how they are. Their happiness comes from within, so it cannot be stolen by outer change. This is the kind of happiness that Buddhist wisdom points to, a happiness that is not dependent on if or when. Not, I will be happy if I succeed. Not, I will be happy when I am loved. But I am happy now because peace is already inside me, waiting to be noticed. When you anchor yourself in this truth, worry begins to fade. You no longer live in fear of losing what you have or not gaining what you want, because your happiness is not tied to either. You become free, unshaken by the ups and downs of life, steady in your center. It is important to understand that this does not mean you must reject the world or stop enjoying life's gifts. You can still work for success, enjoy relationships, appreciate beauty, and celebrate your blessings. But you enjoy them differently, not as your only source of happiness, but as expressions of the happiness already within you. You are no longer a beggar chasing joy outside. You are a fountain overflowing with joy inside, and everything else becomes extra. So the next time you find yourself worrying about money, about your future, about what others think, pause and ask yourself, am I placing my happiness in something outside of me? Am I tying my peace to something I cannot fully control? If the answer is yes, gently return to your breath, return to your heart, return to the awareness that happiness is not out there, it is in here. The outside world will rise and fall, but your inner stillness can remain untouched. And when you live from that stillness, no worry can steal your joy. This is the ultimate freedom, to walk through life with an unshakable happiness, not because life is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. To smile in the face of uncertainty, not because you know the future, but because you trust yourself, to remain steady no matter what comes. To let go of fear, because you know that happiness is not in the hands of others, but in your own awareness. This is the path that Buddhism offers, and it is the happiness that cannot be stolen, no matter how strong the winds of worry may blow. 8. The practice of returning again and again. One of the most important truths about worry and about happiness is that it is not a battle you fight once and win forever. The mind is restless by nature. Thoughts come and go like waves on the ocean, and sometimes those waves are calm while other times they rise into storms. You may practice mindfulness, gratitude, letting go, and awareness, and yet you will still find worry knocking at your door. It is not a failure. It is not a sign that you are weak. It is simply the nature of the mind. This is why Buddhism teaches the art of returning again and again to the present, to your breath, to your center, no matter how many times you wander away. Most people believe that peace is a permanent state you enter once you have mastered yourself, as though one day you will suddenly arrive at a place where no worry or fear will ever touch you again. But this is not how the human mind works. Even great masters, monks, and teachers have moments of worry or doubt. The difference is not that they never experience these things, it is that they know how to return. They know how to catch themselves quickly, to step back from the story of the mind, and to rest again in the present moment. This is why the practice is not perfection, but persistence. Every time you notice you are lost in worry, and you bring yourself back, you are strengthening your freedom. Imagine walking down a path in a forest. From time to time you get distracted. You see a flower off to the side, or you follow the sound of a bird, and suddenly you are off the main path. In that moment, you may feel lost, but as soon as you notice where you are, you can gently step back onto the path and continue walking. Life is exactly like this. Worry is the distraction that pulls you away. But the moment you recognize it and return to awareness, you are back on the path of peace. You do not need to feel guilty for wandering. Wandering is natural. What matters is your practice of returning. This practice of returning is what transforms worry into wisdom. Because each time you come back from worry into awareness, you learn something about your mind. You see how easily it clings to the future, how quickly it repeats old fears, how much it wants to control the uncontrollable. And in seeing this, you become wiser, more compassionate with yourself, and more skilled at letting go. Worry itself becomes a teacher, showing you where your attachments are and where your trust still needs to grow. Without worry, you might never notice how much you rely on control or how deeply you fear loss. With worry, you are given the chance to practice awareness again and again until the practice becomes part of who you are. One of the great strengths of Buddhist teaching is its honesty about the nature of the human mind. It does not demand that you become superhuman, untouched by doubt or fear. Instead, it teaches you to meet yourself exactly as you are, with patience, compassion, and steadiness. When worry arises, do not treat it as an enemy you must destroy. Treat it as a reminder. Let it be a signal that you have wandered away from the present, and use it as a guide to return. In this way, even worry serves your awakening, because it points you back to awareness every time it visits. The practice of returning also reveals another profound truth. Happiness is not something you achieve and then hold forever. It is something you renew in each moment. Just as you cannot breathe once and expect to live, you cannot practice awareness once and expect to never worry again. Life is a continuous flow, and happiness flows with it. Each breath, each step, each moment is an opportunity to begin again. And in beginning again, you discover a freedom that is not dependent on never making mistakes or never wandering, but on always having the power to return. In practical life, this means learning to forgive yourself quickly. Too often, when people notice they are worrying again, they criticize themselves. Why am I still like this? Why can't I stop worrying? I thought I had moved past this. But this only adds another layer of suffering. The Buddha taught compassion not only toward others, but toward yourself. When you notice worry, smile gently at yourself and say, "Ah, my mind has wandered again. That is natural. Now I return." This gentle, compassionate return is far more powerful than harsh judgment because it allows you to keep practicing without fear. Another way to strengthen the practice of returning is through small anchors throughout your day. Choose simple actions that bring you back to the present whenever you feel lost. For some, it may be the act of pausing to take 3 slow breaths. For others, it may be touching the ground with your hand, reminding yourself that you are here. It may be repeating a calming phrase, such as "this moment is enough." It may be looking at the sky, the trees, or the face of a loved one. Each of these anchors becomes a doorway back into awareness. Over time, the act of returning becomes quicker, easier, and more natural until it feels like second nature. The greatest freedom comes when you realize that you do not need to control the mind to be at peace. You do not need to stop worry forever. You only need to learn how to see it, how to return, and how to rest in the present again. This is the essence of Buddhist practice, not to eliminate every storm, but to learn how to sail with calmness no matter how the winds blow. And when you live this way, something extraordinary begins to happen. Worry still arises, but it no longer frightens you. You see it as part of the human experience, not as a threat to your happiness. You live with a lightness because you no longer demand perfection from yourself or from life. You simply practice returning again and again with gentleness and patience. And with each return, you discover that happiness is not something fragile that can be lost. It is always here waiting for you, just beneath the noise of the mind. This is why awareness is not only a practice but a homecoming. Each time you return, you are coming home to yourself, to the place where peace already exists. You are remembering that happiness was never outside of you, it was always within, hidden by clouds of worry. And the more you return, the clearer that inner sky becomes, until one day you realize that no matter how often worry arises, it can never steal the happiness that is your true nature. So let this be your final lesson. Do not fear the return of worry. Do not chase the idea of a perfect worry-free life. Instead, trust in your ability to return again and again to the stillness within, because the one who knows how to return is never truly lost. And in that knowing, you will find the kind of happiness that cannot be broken, the kind of peace that no storm can shake, and the kind of freedom that no worry can take away. 9. Freedom comes when you stop fighting with life. At the root of worry lies resistance. Worry is not only a fear of the future, it is a quiet fight with life itself. It is the mind saying, "Things must not go wrong. People must not leave me. Circumstances must not change. The future must not unfold in ways I cannot control." And yet, life is built on change. Every moment is shifting, dissolving, and becoming something new. To demand that it stay fixed according to your preferences is like standing on the shore and shouting at the waves to stop moving. They will never obey. The more you resist, the more you suffer. And the more you resist, the more worry grows, because deep down you know you cannot control what you are trying to resist. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering arises not from life itself, but from our clinging and our resistance to the natural flow of things. The Buddha said that attachment is the root of suffering. Worry is simply attachment projected into the future. You attach yourself to a specific outcome. I must succeed. I must stay healthy. I must not lose this relationship. And then you suffer with the fear of losing it. Or you resist what is already happening. This should not be this way. This pain should not exist. This problem should not have come to me. and your resistance multiplies your suffering. In both cases, you are fighting against the flow of reality, and the battlefield is your own mind. But what if you stopped fighting? What if instead of resisting, you allowed life to move as it does, like water flowing down a stream? What if you accepted the truth that you cannot control everything and instead chose to flow with what comes? This is not weakness, it is not giving up. It is the deepest strength, because it frees you from the constant exhaustion of resisting what cannot be resisted. When you stop fighting, worry begins to dissolve, because there is nothing left to defend against. You are no longer bracing for impact. You are opening to the present. Think about a tree in the middle of a storm. If the tree is rigid, it may break under the force of the wind, but if it bends, if it sways with the storm, it survives. Flexibility is its strength. The same is true with your mind. If you demand that life always bend to you, you will break under its storms. But if you learn to bend with life, to move with change instead of resisting it, you become unshakable. Worry cannot take root in a mind that has learned to flow. Now, this acceptance does not mean that you passively accept every situation without action. If a fire starts in your home, you do not sit quietly and say, "This is life." You act. You put out the fire. But you act without adding unnecessary suffering on top of what is already happening. Most people suffer twice, once from the situation and again from their worry and resistance about it. The first suffering is sometimes unavoidable. The second suffering is optional. When you accept reality as it is, you still take wise action, but you do so from a place of clarity and calm, not from panic and fear. This truth is especially clear when you look at how worry distorts the mind. Worry makes you live in constant tension, as though life were an enemy waiting to strike. You walk through your days bracing yourself against possibilities that have not even arrived. But when you cultivate acceptance, the bracing stops. You are no longer at war with the future. You begin to trust yourself to face challenges when they come, instead of exhausting yourself by fighting them in your imagination beforehand. This trust is what Buddhists call confidence in the Dharma, the confidence that life unfolds according to its own rhythm, and that you are capable of walking the path of awareness through it all. Consider this example. Imagine you are caught in the rain without an umbrella. One person curses the sky, resists, complains, and suffers with every drop. Another person accepts the reality, they are wet, and simply walks calmly through the rain. The rain is the same, but the experience is completely different. Worry is like cursing the rain before it even falls. You imagine the storm, you resist it, and you suffer for it, even when the sky above you is still clear. Acceptance, however, teaches you to walk lightly, whether in sunshine or storm, because you no longer waste energy resisting what is beyond your power. The Buddha often compared life to a river, always flowing, never the same from one moment to the next. You cannot step into the same river twice, because by the time your foot touches it again, both you and the river have changed. To resist this truth is to live in constant worry, trying to freeze the river in place. But to accept it is to live with peace, flowing with the current, adapting to its turns, trusting its course. This is where freedom is found, not in controlling the river, but in learning how to float upon it. So how do you cultivate this acceptance in daily life? Begin with small things. When you face delays in traffic, instead of resisting and filling your mind with anger, breathe and remind yourself, this is the flow of life. I cannot change this moment, but I can choose peace within it. When someone speaks harshly to you, instead of replaying their words and worrying about them for hours, recognize, their words are theirs, not mine. I will not resist the reality of what has been said, but I will not carry it as a burden. When the future feels uncertain, instead of worrying endlessly, tell yourself, Uncertainty is the nature of life. I will meet it with awareness, one step at a time. Each of these small acts of acceptance weakens the grip of worry and strengthens your inner freedom. The paradox of this practice is that the more you accept, the more capable you actually become. People often believe that worry makes them more responsible, more prepared, more careful. But in truth, worry clouds the mind, while acceptance clears it. A worried mind is like muddy water. You cannot see through it clearly. An accepting mind is like a calm pool. You can see deeply, and you can act wisely. So by releasing worry and embracing acceptance, you do not become careless. You become more effective, more compassionate, and more steady in your actions. Over time, this way of living changes your entire relationship with life. You no longer see it as something to be feared or fought, but as something to be lived fully, moment by moment. You understand that you cannot hold the future in your hands, but you can hold your breath, your awareness, and your response right now. And in holding these, you discover that peace is not about controlling life, it is about living in harmony with it. This is the freedom that comes when you stop fighting with life. It is the freedom of no longer wasting your energy, resisting the inevitable. It is the freedom of walking lightly, trusting the river, bending with the storm, and accepting that worry cannot protect you from reality. Only awareness and acceptance can. And once you begin to live this way, worry becomes unnecessary. Because when you are no longer fighting life, you realize there was never anything to fear in the first place. 10. The highest peace comes from trusting the flow of life. If we trace worry back to its deepest roots, we find that it is not only about fear of the future, nor simply about craving control. At its core, worry is a lack of trust. It is the mind's refusal to rest in the natural flow of life. It is the belief that unless you hold tightly to every detail, unless you rehearse every outcome, unless you guard yourself against every possible danger, you will not be safe. Worry is the constant whisper, what if life does not carry me? What if I fall? What if I lose everything? This is why worry feels endless, because it is built on doubt, the doubt that you are not supported by the very fabric of existence. To overcome worry at its deepest level, you must learn to cultivate trust, not a blind, careless trust, but a deep and steady faith in the flow of life. This lesson is perhaps the most challenging because the human mind loves control. From the moment you are born, you begin to build strategies to protect yourself. As a child, you cry to get attention, and you learn that actions can shape your environment. As you grow older, you realize that planning helps, effort brings results, and caution prevents mistakes. These lessons are useful, but if carried too far, they become chains. You begin to believe that life itself depends entirely on your ability to control it, and so you live in constant tension, always planning, always predicting, always bracing for what might go wrong. This tension is what we call worry, and it robs you of the joy that could be yours right now. Buddhism teaches us that life is not separate from us, but part of us. The same forces that move the rivers, that carry the seasons, that make the trees grow and the stars burn, are the forces that sustain you. Your breath is not something you control. It flows naturally without your effort. Your heart beats, your cells regenerate, your body lives, not because you constantly manage it, but because life itself is carrying you. In the same way, the larger events of your life unfold with a rhythm that is beyond your mind's control. This is why clinging to control and constant worry are illusions. They deny the very truth that you are already being carried. To trust the flow of life is to awaken to this truth. It is to see that life has always moved forward, even when you thought it would not. Think of your own past. How many times did you worry about something endlessly, only to look back later and realize that life carried you through? The problem passed, the situation resolved, the storm ended, and you survived. In fact, every difficulty you have faced has brought you here to this very moment. You are still breathing, still alive, still moving forward. Life has never abandoned you, not once. Even in your darkest moments, it carried you through. To forget this is to worry. To remember this is to trust. Trust does not mean that nothing bad will ever happen. It does not mean you will never suffer loss, sickness, or change. What it means is that you understand that even in those moments, life continues to move and you continue to grow. Trust is not the denial of pain. It is the confidence that pain will not destroy you. Trust is not the belief that life will always go as you want. It is the deeper knowing that life will always go as it must, and that you have the strength to meet it with awareness and peace. The Buddha often spoke of impermanence as a liberating truth. Everything changes, everything passes. Nothing lasts forever. Not your joys, not your sorrows, not your successes, not your failures. When you resist this truth, you worry endlessly because you are trying to make permanent what cannot be permanent. You try to hold on to health, youth, relationships, or wealth, fearing their loss. You try to avoid every difficulty, fearing their arrival, but when you trust impermanence, you realize that just as joy will fade, so too will sorrow. Just as problems come, they also go. No storm lasts forever. No night is without dawn. To trust this flow is to free yourself from the chains of worry, because you no longer cling to what must change, nor do you fear the changes that will come. Cultivating this trust is a practice, not a sudden decision. It begins with awareness, seeing clearly how much of your life is already being carried without your effort. Notice how the earth spins, how the sun rises, how your breath flows, how your body heals a wound, how seasons come and go without your command. These simple truths remind you that life has a wisdom far greater than the mind's limited understanding. You are part of this wisdom, not separate from it. When you surrender to this truth, you find peace. This surrender does not mean passivity. It does not mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means aligning your actions with the flow of life instead of fighting against it. When you see a problem, you act, but you act from a place of clarity, not panic. When you face uncertainty, you prepare, but you prepare with calmness, not fear. You do what you can, and you trust life to handle what you cannot. This balance between action and surrender is the essence of wisdom. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of endless worry, because you no longer demand that life obey your plans. You flow with life as it is. In practical terms, this trust can be cultivated in many ways. Meditation is one of the most powerful. When you sit quietly and observe your breath, you are reminded that life sustains you without your control. Each inhalation and exhalation is a lesson in trust. You do not need to grasp the breath. It comes on its own. You do not need to hold the breath. It leaves on its own. Life breathes you, just as it carries you. Mindful living also strengthens trust. When you eat a meal slowly, when you walk with awareness, when you pause to notice the beauty around you, you are reminded that life offers small gifts constantly, if only you allow yourself to see them. Gratitude also builds trust, because it teaches you to notice how much has already been given to you without effort. Each moment of thankfulness dissolves a little more of the doubt that fuels worry. The deepest trust comes from direct experience. Over and over again, life will show you that it carries you. The challenge is not that life fails, but that you forget. Each time you remember, you strengthen your faith, and eventually you live in a way where trust is your natural state. You no longer cling to outcomes, you no longer tremble at uncertainty, you no longer waste your days in endless worry. Instead, you rest in the quiet, knowing that whatever comes, you will meet it with awareness, and whatever goes, you will let it go with peace. When you reach this level of trust, happiness becomes unshakable. It is not the happiness of conditions being perfect. It is the happiness of knowing that even when conditions are imperfect, you are still free. It is the happiness of no longer being at war with life, but flowing with it. It is the happiness of resting in your true nature, which is peace itself. This is the highest peace, not the absence of difficulty, but the absence of resistance. Not the promise of certainty, but the freedom from needing certainty. Not the guarantee of safety, but the trust that life will carry you, as it always has, as it always will. When you live in this trust, worry becomes unnecessary, because you finally understand the truth. You were never alone, and you were never in control. You were always part of the great flow of life, and in that flow, you are safe, you are supported, and you are free. 11. The silence beyond worry. Discovering the unshakable self. If we look deeper into the nature of worry, we begin to see something remarkable. Worry only exists when you identify with the surface of your mind. It thrives in thoughts, in mental chatter, in stories about what might happen or what has already happened. But beneath this surface, there is a deeper dimension of you, silent, spacious, and untouched. This dimension does not rise or fall with the waves of worry, just as the deep ocean is not disturbed by the surface ripples. To end worry at its root, you must learn to connect with this deeper self, the awareness that watches thoughts but is never caught by them. Most people live entirely on the surface of their minds. They believe every thought, identify with every fear, and mistake every worry as truth. When a thought arises, what if I lose my job? What if my loved one leaves me? What if I fail? They become the thought. They feel as though the worry defines them. But in reality, the thought is just a visitor, a passing cloud. The one who is aware of the thought is not the same as the thought itself. This distinction is the beginning of liberation. The Buddha often described the mind as a monkey, restless, jumping from branch to branch, never still. Worry is one of the monkey's favorite games, swinging from the past to the future, never pausing in the present. But you are not the monkey, you are the one watching. The more you learn to rest in this awareness, the less power the monkey has over you. Thoughts may come, but they do not carry you away. Worries may arise, but they dissolve in the vast space of your awareness. To experience this, you must begin to practice silence. Not silence as the absence of sound, but silence as the presence of awareness without distraction. When you sit quietly, breathing slowly, you begin to notice the endless stream of thoughts passing through your mind. At first, this may feel overwhelming. You may discover just how busy and restless your thoughts truly are. But if you remain still and keep watching, you begin to notice a gap, a space between the thoughts, and in that space, you feel a silence that is not disturbed by what passes through it. This silence is who you truly are. Worry cannot survive in this silence because it has nothing to cling to. Worry needs your attention, your belief, your identification. When you stop feeding it and simply rest in awareness, worry fades like a shadow in the light. The more you connect with this silence, the more you realize that happiness is not something you gain by solving all your problems. It is already here, in the spaciousness of your true self. Think of the sky. Clouds appear, storms rage, lightning flashes, but the sky itself is never harmed. It remains vast and open, no matter what passes through it. Your awareness is like the sky. Thoughts, emotions, worries, and fears are like clouds. They come and go, but the sky remains unchanged. If you identify with the clouds, you are constantly shifting, restless, and afraid. But if you identify with the sky, you are free, unshaken, and at peace. Worry tries to convince you that you must solve every cloud, that you must chase them, fight them, or hold on to them. But when you realize you are the sky, you understand that clouds are not a problem to be solved. They are simply passing forms. They do not need to be resisted. They need only to be allowed, and when you allow them, they dissolve on their own. This is the power of silence. This lesson is especially important because many people believe that to overcome worry, they must think their way out of it. They try to argue with their thoughts, to replace negative stories with positive ones, to analyze every fear until it disappears, but the mind cannot silence itself with more thoughts. The only true way to transcend worry is to step back from thought altogether and rest in awareness. From this place, even the most frightening worries lose their hold because you see them clearly as passing events, not as who you are. The practice of silence can be woven into your daily life. Begin with moments of stillness. Sit for a few minutes each morning and simply watch your breath. Notice the rise and fall of the chest, the gentle flow of air, the subtle pauses between inhalation and exhalation. As thoughts arise, do not chase them. Simply let them pass, like leaves floating down a river. Each time you notice yourself being pulled into a worry, gently return to the breath. This is how you train yourself to step out of identification with thoughts. With time, you begin to carry this awareness with you into daily life. Imagine you are walking through a busy street. The noise of cars, voices, and activity surrounds you, yet inside you are calm, watching it all from the silence of awareness. Worry may whisper, but it no longer dominates because you are anchored in something deeper. Or imagine you are facing a real challenge, a health scare, financial difficulty, or uncertainty in your future. Instead of being consumed by endless what-ifs, you take a breath and connect with the silent awareness within. From that place you still act, you still make decisions, but you do so with clarity, not fear. This is the strength of silence. It does not remove life's challenges, but it gives you the unshakable ground from which to face them. Over time, this practice reveals an extraordinary truth. You are not the small self that worries about survival. You are the awareness that watches it all. This awareness has no fear, no craving, no worry. It is vast, silent, and eternal. To rest in this awareness is to taste a happiness that cannot be touched by circumstances. It is not the happiness of excitement or achievement, but the happiness of freedom, the happiness of being unbound by the restless games of the mind. When you discover this silence, worry loses its meaning. It may still arise, but it no longer defines you. It becomes like a wave, rising and falling in the ocean, while the depths remain still. You begin to live with a quiet confidence, knowing that no matter how loud the surface becomes, you can always return to the stillness within. This is the deepest refuge, the place where the storms of life cannot reach you. The Buddha often spoke of nirvana as the extinguishing of the fires of craving, aversion, and delusion. Worry is part of that fire. It burns because it clings, resists, and confuses. When you rest in silence, the fire has nothing to feed on, and it naturally fades. This does not mean you never think again, or that you become detached from the world. It means you learn to live in the world without being enslaved by its worries. You participate fully in life, but from a place of deep peace. So let this be your next step on the path. Whenever worry arises, do not try to solve it immediately. Instead, pause, breathe, step back. Ask yourself, who is aware of this worry? And then rest in the awareness itself. The more you do this, the more you discover that beneath every storm of thought, there is a silence that never moves. That silence is your true self, and it is beyond worry. This is the highest freedom, not to escape life, but to discover the unshakable peace that has been with you all along. In that silence, worry has no home. In that silence, happiness is not fragile but eternal. And in that silence, you discover that the self you thought was small, restless, and anxious was never the real you. The real you is vast, still, and free, like the sky itself, untouched by clouds, radiant in its openness. 12. The impermanence of worry, seeing that nothing lasts forever. If you examine worry closely, you will see that it is built on the fear that what you are experiencing now will last forever, or that the painful possibilities you imagine in your mind will never end once they begin. Worry says, if I lose my job, I will be ruined for life. Worry whispers, if I get sick, I will never recover. Worry convinces you, if I fail, I will always be a failure. But all of these voices rest on a lie, the lie of permanence. The mind believes that things will remain stuck in place, frozen, eternal. But reality shows us a different truth. Everything is impermanent. Everything arises, changes, and passes away. The Buddha called this truth anicca, the universal impermanence of all things. To truly see this is to shatter the foundation of worry, because you realize that whatever comes, it cannot last forever. Consider your own life. Think of the moments you once believed would never end, the heartbreak that felt like it would break you forever, the failure that seemed to mark your destiny, the fear that consumed your nights. At the time, they felt unbearable, permanent, endless. And yet here you are, on the other side of them. They came, they stayed for a while, and then they passed. Even the deepest pains softened with time. Even the darkest nights gave way to dawn. This is the nature of all things. Nothing stays the same. And if nothing stays the same, then worry has no solid ground to stand on. Worry thrives on the illusion of permanence. It says, this pain will last forever. This problem will never change. This danger will never leave me. But when you shine the light of awareness on these thoughts, you see how false they are. No storm has ever lasted forever. No night has ever stopped the sun from rising. Even mountains crumble with time, rivers carve new paths, stars burn out, and galaxies shift. If the universe itself is in constant change, how could your personal worries be exempt from this truth? To see impermanence clearly is to free yourself from the grip of worry, because you know that whatever arises, it will also fade. This truth does not mean that life will always be easy. Impermanence applies to joys as well as sorrows. The happiness you feel today will also change. The people you love will also one day leave or pass away. This can sound frightening at first, but it is actually the doorway to deep peace. Because impermanence teaches you to stop clinging, to stop resisting, to stop imagining that you can freeze life in place. When you accept impermanence, you begin to live fully in each moment, knowing it is precious because it will not last. You savor the laughter, you appreciate the beauty, you hold your loved ones more gently, because you understand that all of it is fleeting. And in this appreciation, worry fades, because you are no longer living in fear of loss, you are living in gratitude for what is here now. Impermanence also gives you strength. When you face hardship, instead of drowning in fear that it will last forever, you remind yourself, this too shall pass. When worry says, I cannot survive this, wisdom replies, you have survived before, and you will again. Nothing lasts forever. Every pain carries its own ending within it. Every difficulty has a season, and no season is eternal. When you truly understand this, even suffering becomes bearable because you know it is temporary. The Buddha often used the image of a flame to describe impermanence. A flame burns brightly for a while, then flickers, then fades. Thoughts are like flames. Worries are like flames. They flare up, sometimes with great intensity, but inevitably they weaken and go out. When you watch your worries with awareness, you see this process clearly. A thought of fear arises. It feels overwhelming for a few moments, but if you do not feed it, it loses its energy and disappears. The mind may create another thought, but it too will pass. By watching this cycle again and again, you begin to trust impermanence, and in that trust, you find freedom. To integrate this into your daily life, practice seeing impermanence in small ways. Notice the way your breath rises and falls. Each inhalation is born, lives for a moment, and dies into an exhalation. Notice the way your emotions shift throughout the day. Anger arises and falls, joy comes and goes, sadness appears and dissolves. Notice the way the seasons change, the way flowers bloom and wither, the way clouds form and vanish. All of life is impermanence in motion. When you make this observation a habit, you train your mind to see change not as a threat, but as the very nature of reality. The more you see impermanence, the less tightly you cling. You stop grasping at joy as though you could keep it forever, and you stop fearing pain as though it would stay forever. You begin to relax into the rhythm of life, the flow of coming and going, rising and falling. And in that relaxation, worry dissolves, because worry has no place in a mind that trusts change. One of the most liberating truths is that even worry itself is impermanent. Think about how many times in your life you were consumed with a worry, only to look back later and laugh at how much energy you wasted on it. Worries come and go, like clouds drifting across the sky. They feel heavy while they are here, but they always pass. When you remember this, you no longer give them so much power. You begin to see them as temporary visitors, not permanent truths. The ultimate gift of impermanence is peace. When you stop clinging and resisting, when you stop believing that things must stay the same or else you cannot be happy, you open yourself to a deeper freedom. You realize that happiness is not about holding on to perfect conditions. It is about flowing with the ever-changing nature of life. You find joy not in permanence, but in presence. You live fully in each moment, knowing it will not last, and that is what makes it precious. So the next time worry begins to take hold, pause and remember impermanence. Say to yourself, "This too shall pass." This thought is temporary. This fear is not eternal. Life is always moving, and so will this. In that remembrance, you reclaim your freedom. You step out of the illusion of permanence and into the truth of change. And in the truth of change, worry loses its foundation. Impermanence does not take away your happiness, it deepens it. Because when you see clearly that nothing lasts forever, you begin to cherish everything more deeply, live more fully, and worry less. You know that both joy and sorrow will come and go, but your awareness remains steady and free. And in that awareness you find a peace that no change can disturb. 13. The middle path, escaping the extremes of worry. One of the most profound teachings of the Buddha is the middle path, a way of living that avoids extremes and brings balance to the mind, body, and spirit. When we look closely at worry, we can see that it is born from extremes. On one side, there is the extreme of attachment and craving, where you cling desperately to outcomes and demand that life unfold exactly as you want. On the other side, there is the extreme of fear and aversion, where you push life away, resist change, and see danger in every shadow. Worry is the restless bouncing between these two poles, a mind swinging like a pendulum between desire and fear, never finding rest. The middle path offers the way out. It is the art of balance, of not holding too tightly and not pushing too forcefully, of walking calmly between the extremes. Worry often begins with craving. You want success, so you worry about failure. You want love, so you worry about rejection. You want health, so you worry about sickness. This is attachment, placing your happiness on conditions that are uncertain and impermanent, The more tightly you cling, the more terrified you are of losing what you cling to, and so your life becomes dominated by anxious thoughts. But worry also grows out of aversion. You fear pain, so you worry about every situation that might hurt you. You fear change, so you worry whenever life begins to shift. You fear uncertainty, so you worry about all the things you cannot predict. The more you resist, the more exhausted you become, because life will always change whether you resist or not. The Buddha himself knew these extremes. Before his awakening, he lived first as a prince surrounded by every comfort, clinging to pleasure and luxury. Then he renounced it all and lived as an ascetic, starving and torturing his body, resisting life in every form. Neither brought him peace. It was only when he sat beneath the Bodhi tree and realized the truth of the middle path that he discovered freedom. He saw that happiness is not found in clinging to pleasure, nor in running from pain, but in walking calmly in the center, balanced and aware. When you apply this wisdom to worry, you see that the cure is not to force yourself never to care about anything, nor is it to try to control everything. The cure is balance. It is caring deeply without clinging. It is preparing wisely without obsessing. It is facing uncertainty without demanding absolute certainty. It is doing what you can with presence, and then letting life unfold as it must. The middle path does not mean that you stop planning, working, or hoping. It means that you do these things with a light touch, without making your peace depend on the outcome. Imagine holding a bird in your hands. If you grip too tightly, you harm the bird. If you hold too loosely, the bird flies away. But if you hold gently, with balance, the bird rests calmly in your hands. Worry is like gripping too tightly, trying to force life to obey your fears and desires. Carelessness is like holding too loosely, ignoring responsibilities, and pretending nothing matters. The middle path is the gentle balance where you care, but you do not cling. You prepare, but you do not obsess. You love, but you do not imprison. This balance dissolves worry because it removes the extremes that feed it. The middle path also applies to how you treat your own mind. Many people, when they notice themselves worrying, become harsh with themselves. They judge, "Why am I still worrying? I should be stronger. I should be calmer by now." This is another extreme, aversion toward your own experience. Others go to the opposite extreme. They indulge their worries endlessly, believing every fearful thought and drowning in anxiety. Both extremes create suffering. The middle path is to meet your worry with awareness and compassion. You neither indulge it nor attack it. You simply observe it, acknowledge it, and let it pass. This balanced approach is deeply practical. Suppose you are worried about your health. The extreme of craving says, "I must always be perfectly healthy. I cannot accept any sickness." The extreme of aversion says, "If I get sick, everything is ruined. I cannot bear it." Both create endless worry. The middle path says, "I will care for my health wisely. I will eat well, exercise, and seek medical care when needed. But I will also accept that sickness may come, and when it does, I will meet it with awareness and calm." This balance removes the need for worry, because you are doing what you can while accepting what you cannot control. Or consider your relationships. The extreme of craving says, "This person must never leave me. I cannot be happy without them." The extreme of aversion says, "If they leave, my life is over." Both fuel worry and fear. The middle path says, "I love this person. I will care for them, enjoy them, and appreciate them. But I also understand that change is part of life, and if they leave, I will still be whole." This balance allows you to love fully without being enslaved by fear. The middle path is also the way to work with uncertainty. Worry is often the mind's attempt to demand absolute certainty in a world that is always uncertain. One extreme is to try to control everything, planning endlessly, rehearsing every possibility. The other extreme is to give up completely, doing nothing because you feel powerless. Both create suffering. The middle path says, I will prepare wisely for what I can, and I will release what I cannot know. I do not need absolute certainty to live with peace. This balanced attitude removes the fuel that keeps worry alive. What makes the middle path so powerful is that it is not abstract philosophy, but a daily practice. Each time you notice yourself clinging too tightly, you loosen your grip. Each time you notice yourself resisting too strongly, you soften your stance. Each time you find yourself lost in extremes, you gently return to the center. Over time, this becomes a way of being. You stop living in the restless swinging of the pendulum, and you begin to live in the calmness of balance. This practice does not remove challenges from life, but it transforms how you meet them. You no longer worry about holding life in place, because you no longer demand that it be permanent. You no longer worry about pushing life away, because you no longer fear change. You walk calmly, step by step in the middle, with awareness and peace. The middle path is the great teacher of freedom. It teaches you that happiness does not lie in the extremes of clinging or resisting, but in the quiet balance between them. It teaches you that worry is not necessary, because balance gives you strength. It teaches you that peace is not found in controlling life, but in walking harmoniously with it. And when you live this way, worry dissolves naturally, because you are no longer feeding the extremes that keep it alive. So the next time you find yourself consumed by worry, ask, am I clinging too tightly? Am I resisting too strongly? Then pause, breathe, and return to the middle. Walk the balanced path. It is here in this center that you will find the freedom beyond worry, the peace that does not depend on conditions, and the happiness that cannot be shaken by the storms of life. 14. The observer sits seat. Becoming bigger than your worry. If there is one mistake that gives worry its greatest power, it is the mistake of identification. When worry arises in the mind, most people immediately think, this is my thought, this is my problem, this is who I am. They sit inside the thought as though it were their house, decorating its walls, replaying its words, and living in its fear. But Buddhism teaches a radical shift. You are not the thought, you are the awareness behind the thought. You are not the worry, you are the one who notices the worry. To discover this truth is to step into the observer's seat, a place of vast freedom where you are no longer imprisoned by every wave of fear. The mind is like a restless storyteller, constantly weaving tales of what might happen, what could go wrong, what you should regret. Worry is one of its favorite stories, a script filled with what-ifs and imagined disasters. But a story only controls you if you forget that it is a story. The moment you step back and recognize, this is just a story in my mind, you begin to see it differently. It no longer feels like an unshakable truth. It feels like a passing event. In that instant, worry loses much of its power. Imagine sitting in a theater, watching a movie. When you are deeply absorbed, you feel as though the characters' struggles are your struggles, their fears are your fears, their pain is your pain. Your body reacts, you cry, your heart races, you tense. But then the lights turn on, and you remember it was only a film. The emotions felt real, but the story was not reality. In the same way, when you identify with worry, you are lost inside the film of your mind. But when you step back into the observer's seat, the lights come on, and you see that worry was only a passing projection. This practice of observation is central to Buddhist mindfulness. The Buddha taught that liberation comes from seeing clearly, not from fighting with your mind, not from suppressing thoughts, but from simply observing them without attachment. When you observe, you create space. Instead of being swept away, you notice, here is worry. It has arisen, it will stay for a while, and then it will pass. Just as a bird lands on a branch and then flies away, thoughts land in the mind and then leave. You are not the branch, and you are not the bird. You are the sky that contains both. At first, this may feel difficult. The pull of identification is strong, and worries often come with powerful emotions: tightness in the chest, knots in the stomach, restlessness in the mind. These sensations make the worry feel solid, undeniable, but even here, observation is possible. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," you begin to say, "Anxiety is present." Instead of saying, "I am worried," you say, "Worry is arising." This small shift in language is a great shift in perception. It reminds you that you are not the emotion, you are the observer of the emotion. The power of this shift cannot be overstated. When you live as the observer, worry can no longer trap you. It may still appear, but you no longer mistake it for reality. You no longer drown in it. You simply watch it, and in watching, you discover something extraordinary. Every worry dissolves on its own when you do not feed it. No thought lasts forever. No emotion stays permanently. Everything that arises passes. The observer sees this truth, and because of that, the observer remains free. One of the great gifts of becoming the observer is that you also see the patterns of your mind more clearly. You notice that the same kinds of worries return again and again, like old actors playing new roles in the same play. You may worry about money, about relationships, about health, about the future, but if you step back, you realize the root is the same restless energy of fear. Seeing this pattern gives you wisdom. You no longer chase each worry as if it were unique and urgent. You begin to say, "Ah, this is the same old habit of worry, I see you." And with that recognition, the cycle weakens. Daily practice strengthens this perspective. Sit quietly for a few minutes and simply watch your thoughts. Imagine them as clouds drifting across the sky. Some are light and fluffy, some are dark and heavy, some pass quickly, and some linger, but none of them are the sky itself. You, the observer, are the sky, vast, open, unchanging. The more you rest in this awareness, the less attached you become to the passing clouds. Worry may still appear, but you know it will pass, because clouds always do. This practice can also be carried into everyday life. When you are walking and notice your mind replaying a fearful story, pause and take one mindful breath. Say silently, "This is a thought. This is worry." When you are lying in bed, restless with anxiety about tomorrow, step back inwardly and remind yourself, "This is my mind telling a story. It is not reality." When you are speaking with someone and notice yourself imagining their judgment, catch yourself and observe. This is fear of rejection arising. I see it. Each of these small acts of observation strengthens your freedom. The observer's seat also brings compassion. When you see your mind spinning in worry, instead of judging yourself harshly, "Why am I like this? Why can't I stop?" you begin to smile gently. You recognize that this is simply the nature of the human mind. It worries, it fears, it creates stories. You no longer need to punish yourself for this. You simply watch, with patience and kindness, until the worry fades. This self-compassion is part of the middle path, not clinging, not rejecting, but observing with gentle acceptance. In time, living from the observer's seat changes your entire sense of self. You no longer think of yourself as a bundle of thoughts and emotions constantly at war. You realize you are something larger, deeper, more spacious, the awareness in which all thoughts and emotions arise, and this awareness is never worried. It is silent, still, and free. Worry exists only on the surface. Beneath it, you are unshaken. The great masters often describe enlightenment as simply remembering who you truly are. Not the restless mind, not the anxious self, but the vast awareness beyond it. Worry cannot touch this awareness because worry is temporary and awareness is eternal. When you rest here, you discover a happiness that does not depend on outcomes, conditions, or the absence of problems. It is the happiness of freedom, the happiness of being larger than every thought. So the next time worry takes hold, pause and step back. Ask yourself, who is watching this worry? Then rest in that awareness. The more you do this, the more you strengthen the observer, and the more powerless worry becomes. In the end, the secret is simple. You are not your worry. You are the sky, vast and unchanging, and worry is only a cloud that drifts across your surface. Once you discover this truth, you are free, because the sky never fears the clouds. 15. Turning worry into a teacher, learning from the mindset's restlessness. For most of your life, worry has probably felt like an enemy. It is the whisper that keeps you awake at night, the knot in your stomach when the future feels uncertain, the restless energy that robs you of peace, even when nothing is immediately wrong. It is the shadow that follows you through your days, always ready to remind you of what might go wrong. Because of this, the natural response is to see worry as a curse, something to resist, fight, or escape. But Buddhism offers a different view. What if worry, instead of being your enemy, could become your teacher? What if every moment of worry was not just a burden, but also an invitation to look more deeply into yourself, to see your attachments clearly, to uncover the places where you still cling to control, and to strengthen the wisdom that leads to freedom? When you begin to view worry in this way, its nature changes. It no longer feels like a monster chasing you. It becomes a mirror reflecting what is inside. Each time worry arises, it is pointing to something within you that is not yet free. Instead of pushing it away, you can pause and ask, what is this worry teaching me? What is it showing me about myself? This question transforms worry from an endless cycle into a guide on the path of awareness. Think about it carefully. Worry always points to attachment. If you are worried about money, it shows your attachment to security. If you are worried about health, it shows your attachment to comfort or longevity. If you are worried about relationships, it shows your attachment to love and approval. None of these attachments are wrong. They are natural aspects of being human, but they become chains when you cling too tightly. Worry is the signal that you are clinging. It is like an alarm bell ringing in the mind, saying, here is where you are not yet free. Instead of despising the alarm, you can thank it for showing you the exact place where your practice is needed. The Buddha taught that suffering itself is the doorway to awakening. Without suffering, few people would ever seek the path of wisdom. It is because we suffer that we begin to ask deeper questions about life. Worry is one of the most common forms of suffering, and so it can be one of the greatest doorways. When you feel worry, you are being given the chance to see how the mind operates, how it clings, how it fears, and how it imagines. If you bring awareness to this process, worry becomes your teacher, showing you where to let go and how to return to the present. To turn worry into a teacher, you must practice mindful observation. When a worry arises, instead of being swept away by it, pause and observe. What is this worry about? What story is my mind creating? What fear is being revealed here? Watch it without judgment, like a scientist studying a pattern. Over time, you will see that the same themes appear again and again. Perhaps most of your worries are about rejection, or about loss, or about control. By seeing this clearly, you understand yourself more deeply. You realize that worry is not random. It is a reflection of your deepest attachments. And once you know your attachments, you can begin to loosen them. Another way worry teaches is by showing you impermanence. No worry lasts forever. You may feel consumed by it for an hour, a day, or even a week, but eventually it passes. Looking back, you often see how much energy you wasted on something that never happened, or that resolved itself in a way you could never have predicted. Each time you recognize this, you learn the truth that thoughts are temporary, emotions are temporary, and even fear is temporary. Worry becomes a teacher in patience, showing you that you do not need to panic at every thought, because time itself dissolves them. Worry also reveals the illusion of control. Every time you worry, you are trying to control the future with your mind. You believe that by thinking about it enough, you can shape what happens. But when the future arrives, it rarely looks like what you imagined. This teaches you that control is an illusion. Life unfolds according to countless causes and conditions, most of which are beyond your reach. Worry's failure to control anything is itself the lesson. It shows you again and again that clinging to control is futile. This realization does not make you careless, it makes you wise. You stop wasting energy on what cannot be controlled, and you begin to invest that energy in what can: your awareness, your actions, your kindness, your presence. Most importantly, worry teaches compassion. When you see how much you suffer under the weight of worry, your heart softens toward yourself. You recognize that you are simply human, trying to navigate an uncertain world with a mind that is always reaching for safety. And from this self-compassion, compassion for others naturally grows. You realize that every person you meet is also carrying their own worries, their own restless thoughts, their own fears about the future. This understanding makes you gentler, more patient, more forgiving. In this way, worry becomes a teacher of kindness, connecting you more deeply to the shared humanity of all beings. To practice turning worry into a teacher in your daily life, you can follow 3 simple steps: pause, observe, and listen. When worry arises, first pause, do not run from it, and do not drown in it. Simply stop and breathe. Second, observe. Look at the worry clearly. Name it. This is fear of failure. This is fear of loss. This is fear of the unknown. By naming it, you create space between yourself and the thought. Third, listen. Ask yourself, what is this worry pointing to? What attachment is here? What lesson can I learn from this? Then let the worry itself reveal the teaching. Sometimes the lesson will be to let go. Sometimes it will be to act wisely. Sometimes it will simply be to breathe and remember impermanence. Every worry becomes an opportunity to practice. Over time, this approach changes your entire relationship with worry. It no longer feels like a constant enemy. Instead, it feels like a messenger. Each time it visits, it brings you closer to awareness. Each time it arises, it reminds you to return to the present. Each time it shouts its fearful stories, it gives you the chance to see through illusion. In this way, worry stops being something that only steals from you. It becomes something that teaches you, guides you, and even strengthens you. The great paradox is that the more you accept worry as a teacher, the less it troubles you. Because you no longer resist it, it loses its power. Because you no longer believe it blindly, it cannot control you. Because you use it as fuel for awareness, it becomes part of your awakening. The very thing that once enslaved you becomes the thing that sets you free. So let this be the final lesson. Worry is not here only to harm you. It is also here to wake you up. Every moment of worry is an invitation to look deeper, to see your attachments, to trust impermanence, to release control, and to live with greater compassion. If you can learn to see worry in this way, then even your restless mind becomes part of your path. Nothing is wasted. Every thought, every fear, every moment of unease becomes another step toward freedom. In the end, worry itself bows to awareness. It comes to remind you of what you still cling to, and then it leaves. It shows you where you are still fragile, and then it passes. And each time it does, you grow stronger, clearer, more peaceful. This is the secret gift of worry. It is not just a thief, it is also a teacher. And if you are willing to listen, it will guide you back, again and again, to the freedom and happiness that are already within you. As you have traveled through these lessons, you have seen worry stripped bare. No longer is it only the restless shadow that follows you, no longer the thief of sleep, no longer the endless cycle that keeps you chained to fear. It has been revealed for what it truly is, an echo of attachment, a projection of the mind into places it cannot control, an invitation to return home to the present. We began by seeing how worry lives in the future, while happiness is found only in the now. We walked through awareness of impermanence, through the freedom of letting go, through the compassion of returning again and again. We learned that worry cannot survive in presence, that it loses its foundation when you see it as a teacher rather than an enemy, and that your true self, the awareness behind every thought, was never touched by worry at all. The message woven through all of these teachings is simple but profound. You are not powerless against worry. You do not need to wait for life to become perfect to feel peace. You do not need to eliminate every problem before you can rest. You do not need to control the uncontrollable future to feel safe. Freedom is available right here, in the way you relate to your mind. Worry thrives when you believe it without question, when you fight it without understanding, when you mistake it for who you are. But the moment you step back into awareness, into balance, into trust, worry dissolves like a shadow in sunlight. Think of your life as a river. Worry is the attempt to dam the river, to freeze its waters, to demand that it never change. But rivers cannot be stopped. They move, they bend, they carve their way forward. To fight the river is to exhaust yourself. To flow with the river is to discover peace. This is the essence of the Buddhist path, not to conquer life with control, but to live harmoniously with its flow. In this flow, worry loses its grip because you are no longer demanding certainty. You are walking with awareness, moment by moment. All of the lessons you have studied point you toward the same refuge, the present moment, the awareness behind thought, the trust in impermanence, the compassion that softens even the restless mind. This refuge is not far away. It is not hidden in the future. It is not locked in a sacred temple. It is here, in you now. Every time you take a mindful breath, you return to it. Every time you notice a worry and choose not to believe it, you strengthen it. Every time you rest in the silence behind your thoughts, you taste it, slowly, gently. It becomes your natural way of being. This is why worry is no longer something to be feared. It becomes part of your path. Each time it arises, it shows you where you still cling, where you still resist, where you still forget who you are. And each time you see it clearly, you return to freedom more quickly. Worry becomes a teacher, a guide, even a companion on the journey of awakening. The same voice that once stole your peace now points you back to it. This is the transformation of awareness, turning poison into medicine, turning fear into wisdom, turning worry into awakening. So how do you live from this truth? You live by remembering. Remember that the present is enough. Remember that impermanence carries both pain and joy away. Remember that you are the observer, not the thought. Remember that balance is freedom, not extremes. Remember that trust in life is stronger than control. Remember that even worry itself passes. Each of these truths is like a lantern, guiding you out of the dark forest of fear into the open space of peace. In the end, worry cannot steal your happiness unless you hand it the key. Your happiness does not come from the absence of problems. It comes from the presence of awareness, and awareness is always available to you, in every breath, in every moment, in every step. If you learn to return again and again to this awareness, then even in the middle of uncertainty, you will know peace. Even in the storms of life, you will stand like the sky, vast and unshaken. Let this be the final gift of these lessons, the understanding that you are not bound by worry. You are freer than you think, stronger than you know, and closer to peace than you realize. Worry may still appear, but it is no longer your master. You have walked the path of seeing, of returning, of trusting, of letting go. You have learned that happiness is not stolen by worry. It is revealed when worry fades. And now, with these teachings alive in your heart, you can walk beyond the shadow of worry into a life of balance, presence, and unshakable peace.